recently, the problem in Pittsburgh with that team has been that they've been dropping passes. It's been happening a ton recently. They dropped a bunch of passes against the Ravens 2 weeks ago. Part of why they lost to Washington was drop passes. I believe depending on the numbers on drop passes it's not really an official stat because some are controversial. Like, was that a drop? Was that a good play by the defense? It's a weird thing all over the place. But some people will say that according to their statistics, Pittsburgh leads the NFL in drops. I kind of believe that. Supposedly they have 31. We'll see. Now, they also recently lost to Washington. The Steelers are 11-1. And everybody had a weird reaction to that game. I feel like most of the NFL world really celebrated. They were like, yes, I'm so glad Pittsburgh lost the game. And you guys know me. I don't have a favorite team. I really don't care who is... Yeah, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't, good or bad. Like, I just try to call things like I see it. And people have been calling Pittsburgh, the word they've been using is, they say, the Steelers are frauds. They're frauds. What does that mean? What do you mean the Steelers are frauds? They're a good football team. They're 11-1. And it's just weird rhetoric. It's been a weird conversation. I get a lot of messages saying, they're overrated. They're not as good as they could be. They're this or that. And what does it mean to call Pittsburgh frauds? Does it mean they're going to lose in the playoffs? I mean, they're going to go, 12-4, 13-3, and then they'll lose in the playoffs, and then people will say, see, we told you so. The Steelers are terrible. And I would say, well, I don't know how you look at Pittsburgh and not recognize their talent, not recognize the success they've had this year. It's incredibly hard to win 11 games in a row in the NFL. It deserves respect. It deserves admiration. They got a ton of good weapons on offense. They've been dealing with drops, understandably. Some of the names that come to mind, they got Ray McLeod returning punts. They have what was that broadcaster last week? You kept calling him Ray McDonald for the first quarter. It's kind of weird. They have Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Chase Claypool, Eric Ebron, James Conner. They have Benny Snell. They've got, they have Deontay Johnson. They've got a lot of really impressive receivers, in my opinion, better than people realize. They've been dealing with drops, fine, but they still have a good offensive line. They got a great defense, a phenomenally good defense, maybe the best defense in the NFL. They got a Hall of Fame coach and a Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't know how you don't look at Pittsburgh and go, that's impressive. Not just on paper. They've been doing some good stuff this year. I watch their games and I go, I'm impressed. And people are, the criticism everybody has of Pittsburgh is to say that their margin of victory isn't very impressive. They've barely beat this team and this team and this team, and they lost to Washington. And I, by the way, predicted the Washington loss because Washington is very well coached. And Washington is not going to make a mistake. You have to beat them. They're not going to beat themselves. And I just saw that coming. I was like, I think Washington's better than people realize. They look at the record and they go, well, a bad football team beat Pittsburgh. No, a good football team beat Pittsburgh because the team that has the 5-7 record in Washington is not the same team they were at the beginning of the year. I mean, they are a better team today than they were week one. Washington's gotten way better as the year has gone on. And I guess it's just weird to me. So in the next couple games, let's say that the Steelers lose to Buffalo, they lose to the Colts, they lose to the Browns, right? 3 good teams, probably 3 playoff teams. Fine, right? So they lost to Washington and 3 good teams there. They'd be 12-4. Let's say they go 13-3. They beat Cleveland at the end of the year. Is Pittsburgh a good team or a bad team? A good team has a 13-3 record. A good team is 11-1. I don't know how you look at what Pittsburgh has done. You look at their personnel. You look at how they're playing and go, well, they're overrated. They're not really as good as the record shows. No, there's a reason the record's called a record. It's a record of how well they've done. They're exactly as good as the record shows. And I just think people love to hate on them. I don't know. I think people really are jealous of success or they like to hate on people who do well. I don't fully understand it. And I think Pittsburgh, I bet the city is probably pretty loud about their success, their fans on Twitter or something. I know that their players are they chirp a lot, right? But I mean, criticizing the margin of victory for Pittsburgh is a bit weird when Kansas City, who's also 11-1, barely beat Denver last week. How does anybody explain that? Or what about the fact that it took overtime for Kansas City to beat Justin Herbert and the LA Chargers, who, by the way, the Chargers got beat by the Patriots 45-0. So my point is, NFL math doesn't make sense. You can't go, this team beat this team, so that a win is a win in the NFL. It doesn't matter how you win as long as you win. And I just think it's kind of weird people are saying, oh, the Steelers are overrated. I think one of the impressive things about Pittsburgh this year is they've won in a multitude of different ways, whether it be with their defense or running the football or throwing the football or with their offense or with this or that. Their special teams have won. It's just really, they have talent at every facet of their team. And I just don't really understand the hatred, or hatred's one thing. It's the desire to tear down a team that's clearly a good football team and say, see, they're not very good. And people are like, I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't understand. I have nothing else to say here other than it makes no sense to me why people are so quick to jump on the hate train and attack the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I want to read a question from the audience. Remember, you can write into the show on Patreon. You go to patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. Jack has a question about Pittsburgh. He says, do you think that the Steelers losing to the Washington football team is a blessing in disguise? Now the Steelers can focus more on winning a championship than going 16-0. I think that it will be good for the Steelers to relax in the regular season so they can make sure everyone is healthy and ready to go for the playoffs. When the Patriots tried to go 16-0, I think that Bill Belichick used all his tricks in the regular season, which eventually gave the Giants a lot of film to use against them, and it backfired for the Patriots. The Steelers may have avoided that by losing. And so, Jack, I think that's a good, interesting direction to go here. One thing you got to point out about Pittsburgh is that, and I don't know it's directly about Pittsburgh. Yes, so the Patriots a couple years ago, they did everything they could to beat the Giants, and they beat the Giants in Week 17 last year, a couple years ago. Then they played that team again in the Super Bowl, and they lost because they'd already tipped their hand. And I don't think that going undefeated or having a great regular season is as important as winning a Super Bowl. I think Kansas City is kind of in autopilot mode right now. They're 11-1. It's been an ugly 11-1. There's a reason for that. You look at, remember when it was 72-9 or something? The Golden State Warriors went 72-9, I believe. Something crazy. That's some crazy record. Maybe 73-8. So the Warriors had an incredible year. Whatever, 82 minus 73-9? I don't really care. It doesn't matter. The Warriors had this great season in the regular season, and then as they got to the finals, they lost. And the Warriors realized we expended all this energy trying to have a great regular season, and we still lost the championship. So I guess my point is to say that teams in the NBA have figured out it doesn't matter the regular season. Do good enough to get the number one seed or do good enough to get here, but don't burn everything. Rest is important. It's okay your job is to win a championship, not to have a great regular season. And so it is possible that this does bring a sense of relief to Pittsburgh. Perfection can be distracting. And it's possible that losing to Washington 11-1 rather than 12-0 takes some of the pressure off and actually does help Pittsburgh. It's just an interesting thought by Jack. I like the question and worth taking note of.